Hello, boils and ghouls. You are now tuned in to PVD Horror Podcast. Pleasant screams.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is PVD Horror. I'm Dave. I'm joined here with my co-host, Brandon. And today we have a very special guest for us. We have author and actor, Karyn Parsons, who many of you may know as Hilary Banks from the iconic Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. While she's wildly recognizable for that role, many, I would say probably few are aware of her roots in the horror genre. So we want to dig in on that a little bit, but also talk about what you're up to today and all that stuff. So Karyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So Karyn, you started acting at a young age. What inspired you to get into this field?
Oh gosh, I wanted to act since I was probably like 6 years old.
Mm.
And I know it sounds like, what does a 6-year-old know? But I wouldn't let go of it. You know, my mom kept saying to everybody, I guess I found out later, she was telling everybody, oh, she's going to grow out of it. She's going to grow out of it. But meanwhile, I was an only child, and she was a librarian, and she was a very supportive mom. You know, when I got older, I mean, I'd go to recitals. I did dance recitals and things like that. And she would help make the costumes and attended every recital. And when I got older and I got into acting, I was in some classes here and there. When I got into workshops when I was a teenager and it started to cost money, you know, it didn't occur to me as a kid. It didn't really occur to me that, you know, you think your parents just do everything. It's not until I was a parent that I realized, man, she was shelling out for those classes. Yeah. She was driving me across town whenever they would change locations. Yeah, I mean, I took the bus a lot, but she took me around a lot and was very, very supportive. So I wanted to do it since I was really little. And it just, like I said, it just grew over time. And I would watch other actors like Jodie Foster. I had to see everything that Jodie Foster was in, including, which I'm sure you guys know, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that movie, but I know you guys will. But I had to see everything Jodie Foster was in because she was a kid, and I was a kid, and I wanted to do that, and it just grew. And the closer I got to understanding the craft, the more I liked it. Like, you know, I went from classes to workshops with adults, and reading Stanislavski and Uta Hagen. And as I was doing that, it made me just like it more. And I just dug deeper and deeper in. And then fortunately one day, a theatrical agent visited our acting workshop and saw me do a scene from Sybil that happened to go really well, because that could go one of two ways. And it happened to go really well. And ended up being interested in representing me.
So were you playing a character with multiple personalities?
Yes.
Were you playing Sybil herself?
I was playing Sybil. Yeah, I wasn't the psychiatrist watching. I was actually the one, you know.
That must have been challenging.
The whirling dervish. Yeah, it was really funny about it. I mean, at that point, the workshop moved around. And I remember we were in a space that was used sometimes for kids after school programs, sometimes as a church. It was this building that was used for all of multifunctional kind of, I always thought of it was a church building, but it was just a multifunctional thing, I think, with the big double doors, like a barn type of structure. Okay. And I remember at the end of the scene, like not planned at all, just really feeling the moment, I ended up running out of the scene and out of the doors down the street. But it worked.
A little impromptu. Yeah.
It was.
You sold
it was completely, I was just in it, and I just kept going with it. And but I ended up getting an agent out of that moment.
There you go.
That's awesome. So we were just talking about it before we started the interview about, this probably being your first horror podcast, but, like a lot of non-horror fans, they might know you from other projects, but for us, we're deep rooted, and we know you from the 1988 supernatural horror film Death Spar, which what marked your film debut. How did you become involved in that project?
Oh, I mean, I just got an agent, and I wasn't a member of SAG yet, of Screen Actors Guild. of any union. And well, that's the union mainly. I mean, there's the AFTRA as well. But I got, it came along this audition. It seemed ridiculous that to be, a horror film, really, but it was a legit movie. And I would get if I got it, I would be what they call Taft-Hartleyed, which means that the film would pay for me to be inducted into Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, okay.
And everyone needs that. You need something that's going to Taft-Hartley. That's going to put you into pay those initial dues or whatever. I don't know if it's paying dues. I forgot how it works exactly, but they have to kind of push you into the union, and a job that is a union job. And basically they're saying they need you. And so that you get the job. And so everyone's always very excited about what the job that's going to Taft-Hartley you, or you're going to get your SAG membership. And so mine was Death Spa. And yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Sure.
Michael Fischer, the director, was a very, very funny, interesting Austrian man. He passed away a few years ago. And just a lovely man. But man, and he just was always just kind of like smiling about the film. Like I don't know if it was ironic or not to him. I don't know. Had to be, right? I mean, but it was not an expected experience, but I got a lot out of that experience. A lot out of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When you were looking at the script and all that stuff, did you have any feelings about, like, this movie has like a ton of nudity and like some crazy kills? Did any of that stuff, like, were you like hesitant, or was it like, no, I think this is going to be a good stepping stone for me to get involved in acting more? So kind of how did you approach it?
I think I really thought I'm going to get my SAG, I'm going to get into Screen Actors Guild. I mean, so much of it was that I didn't have to be nude. There was nothing on my side that was that compromising. I just was going to be in this film that might be a really bad horror film. And that was kind of it. But it was kind of fun. My part is this kind of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, part. And with two girls for people who don't know, two girls that have like a mad crush on the owner of the gym. And so we're just these two little geeky little, kids running around chasing after him. And it was harmless and it was funny. And I didn't have anything to do with any of these shower scenes and stuff. It all seemed just like very cliche horror film stuff. So it was just funny to me, like, oh, it's just cliche horror film.
You got off easy because you didn't have to be in that shower scene, but then they asked you, like, you were in the next scene right after, like, are you okay? As if you were in the shower scene. It's just kind of funny.
I don't remember, but okay.
Yeah, it's like
I was supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of tasteful. They didn't ask, Brooke and whatever to be in there taking their tops off when they're not doing anything else in the movie, hardly. We were in the dance class, which was, as you see us like jeting through.
But, did you have to like train for that or practice for that?
The thing is, I did dance at the time.
Okay.
I was that was what I would do for work. As I would work at dance studios, I would work as a receptionist at dance studios. I did it at I think 3 different studios in order to get free classes, because that's what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to dance. I mean, all the time. I was always in class. And so I knew some of the dance people because they were instructors where I worked. So some of the people that were around, and the choreographer, Otis Salid, was a really reputable video and commercial director. And he took me aside once, and he was real serious with me about, I got my little talking to on the set of Death Spa from Otis, because the other girl that I worked with, I can't remember her name, and we were like buds, on the set, of course, but she wasn't a dancer like I was. And Otis was basically saying, you need to take this seriously and put everything into this and not just write it off, because he could see that I was kind of going along with her and going along with her energy. And I think his concern was, as a young girl and being green, I was just gonna and she had, I think, done more work and stuff, that I was just going to kind of follow her lead. And if she didn't take it that seriously, I wouldn't take it that seriously. And he could see that I think he could see that I danced, that I was actually, not that I was some amazing dancer, but he could see that I knew what he was talking about when he was in there. I knew what we were supposed to be doing. And it stayed with me because the lesson, basically what he was saying was just, I was very young at the time, but he was just saying, you have to follow your own thing. This is yours.
Yeah.
This is your time. This is your moment.
Yeah.
This is a film. You're in this. And it's easy because I'm just, not that I was fresh out of high school, but I was still young, a teenager. And he was saying, you don't follow the crowd. You follow your own thing, and things can happen for you. Good things can happen for you. And so I tried to like straighten up and button up and pay attention and do my job the best I could.
So it's like a super powerful message, because it's so easy sometimes to like latch on to a friend or a comfort zone in certain situations, rather than think about how you need to go into it and take
commit.
it.
Commit and risk failing, risk not looking on top of it instead of being cool and over here. And I'll tell you also what's interesting is years later, I would end up working for Otis, a lead on a Coca-Cola commercial. I did a Coca-Cola commercial. I met Don Cheadle on that commercial.
Really?
Yeah. It was a bunch of, I got the guzzle shot. It was like,
we got to dig that one up. That's in the archives.
Well, you know what's funny about it? We did it. It was this whole thing with bunch of actors, and they were step dance. It was like a college, and they were stepping, right? And so it was like a college and the step dance thing. And we're all excited watching them, doing their thing. And then I give my Coke and I guzzle my Coke. And so I felt really good that I accomplished. I got the guzzle shot. But then we finished early. And so there was a room with a Coca-Cola machine, a big, tall Coca-Cola machine. And we had extra time. And so Otis turned the lights out in the room, and he had everyone just dance individually in front of the machine.
Yeah.
And so there was these silhouettes of people dancing. That you can find. I found it before. But because it was this little extra thing everyone was just doing, I was like, oh, they were all guys, and myself and one other girl, Deidre Lang, she was one of the fly girls on In Living Color.
Okay.
And Deidre was a great dancer. So Deidre danced and Dawn danced, and everyone's doing their little individual dance. And I sat it out. And don't you know, they played the commercial of me guzzling, I think, twice. And they played that all the time. So that's the one that everyone got paid for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone that did that got paid.
Yeah. And that would have been a good time maybe to like go along with everybody else, actually.
Right? Yes, exactly.
That advice backfired later in life, but at first it was really good advice.
I mean, it was still the same advice, which was just like, don't worry about looking foolish, or just step out. Because I think that's what held me back, was being afraid, like, so these guys are all dancers. They're all like, she's a really good dancer. I don't need to do this and make a fool out of myself. But meanwhile, I should have.
I mean, I can definitely understand the hesitancy. She's fly girl status. So, I mean, that's a pretty up there.
Yeah.
So, Karyn, taking on the role of Brooke, were there any horror films that you had to watch to get for research to kind of like?
I wasn't to prepare. To prepare, get
yourself ready.
I had to really get into character of Brooke. No, I think my big thing was, it came time to. I mean, you're committing to this character, to what she is. I didn't think it through that. It wasn't that far of a reach. Either. I think it was fun to play this girl. It was easy to recognize her. And, but I will tell you, when I died, do we know how I died? Does anybody know how I died?
So in the film, I don't know if there's an uncut version, but in the film, that's, for the Blu-ray and everything, it doesn't show your death scene.
No, I didn't have it. You know what happened? All we did for my death scene is I remember I was sitting behind the actor's Michael. What was his name? I forgot the lead's name. I was sitting.
Plays Michael. Yeah, I can't remember.
Michael. Yeah. I was sitting behind his desk, kind of waiting for him. I was waiting. I knew he was going to come in, and I was sitting behind his desk or something. And I turn and I look, and something starts coming toward me because I have the camera coming toward me, and I just scream. And I screamed so loud I broke the mic.
Oh, okay.
Which on a horror film, I'm like, really? I mean, what kind of cheap mic was that?
Yeah.
But it was never said how. And then I would think I was supposed to like float by or something. I think I might
Okay.
be like float by later. I've seen the film. It's been a while. I don't remember how it was how that was conveyed. I remember actually I think I watched it last. I watched it with Michael, I think. Anyway, the director.
Yeah.
At some point. But like I said, and I just don't know what his thoughts were on whether he's, and I didn't want to say like this is ridiculous, right?
I will say like the kills are pretty uneven. Like some are really, really gory, and then some are like so. It's
like the machines, like the
yeah. little blasts of blood from the sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it's pretty cool because, like a lot of films in the 80s, I think it comes off, cheesy in the moment. But from myself and Dave, like we're big fans of like cheesy horror, you know what I mean? And that definitely holds up till this day. And what was it? A lot of other films, I know they kind of like had taken inspiration from that film. I think there's a scene in like Final Destination 2, like, so like people like actors and directors like and writers, they're big fans of like that old those old films and kind of like go back and like touch on it. So
that's
pretty
cool.
The tanning booth scene.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh, is a tanning booth scene? That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I think Final Destination had touched on that and had
they ripped off. They not touched on. They ripped it off. They just stole it.
Influenced.
That's a nice way of putting it. I was just going to say that. Did you guys know Vanessa Bell Calloway in that? There's also an actress, Vanessa Bell Calloway. She's a major actress.
Oh, okay, yeah, yep.
And I remember in Vanessa, that's kind of whenever we would bump into each other, it's like, hey, like it's like that's our little connection, is that we were both in Death Squad together. Like,
yeah, her death scene was crazy.
Oh, really? Oh gosh, I have to go back and see it. Did she get it through the neck or something?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, that actress. Yes, she did have a cool one. And will you proudly tell people, hey, I was in Death Spa if like the timing feels right, or is it something that like you hold on to?
No, I don't hide. Oh no, I'll tell people. I don't hide it. I always say I had my first film was a horror film. We've all got one in our pocket someplace, right? And no, I think it's cool. I mean, at the time, you wonder, like, is it? And times have changed. There was a time where actors went to Japan if they wanted to do a commercial because they didn't want anybody to see them in a commercial because it would hurt your reputation. Now it's like everybody's in commercials. That's not a thing. And the same thing with horror films. Horror films were kind of a genre that was reserved for kind of like, I don't know, unless it was The Exorcist, it was considered like a B thing.
Yeah.
And that's changed entirely. So it's not, so even if it was a B genre, C, D genre film, it's still, the horror thing doesn't have, I don't think it has that stigma that maybe it had before.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, it's cool now because, like a lot of actors have come up with horror films and they would try to tuck it away and hide it. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, I no. I think Kevin Bacon was a little bit like that. And then, and then as, the years gone by and everybody appreciated it, it's like, I think he's grown into it.
He's leaning into it.
Yeah,
lately,
he loves it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, things change and people's attitudes toward all of this stuff has changed. So, yeah.
So now, prior to you taking this role, were you a horror fan? Did you love horror movies? Like, which ones were your favorite?
No, I wasn't a horror fan. I mean, I was scared to death. I still haven't seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I just a chainsaw. My husband uses a chainsaw. I can't. Chainsaw just scares the heck out of me. Like gore freaks me out. I like, and I mean, I get scared. The Omen. I saw The Omen when I was a kid, and I can't hear that kind of like and music. I hear, and I'm like, run, screaming. And that wasn't like gory horror. When I see horror, I like thrillers
Mhm.
And I think because I feel like I can manage that. When it's a horror and it's bloody, maybe if the blood shot out the way it does in Death Spa, I could
Yeah, if they were all like
Yeah.
that.
you know. But like Halloween and stuff, I love, I like the Halloween movies. I don't know if you know, I did Major Payne.
Yep.
So I was,
Wow, I actually
Yeah.
that just like threw me back right there. I totally forgot about Major Payne.
yeah.
And
So you know
that's
who
right.
my director is Nick Castle,
Oh, okay.
I
who
did
do you
not
know?
know that.
So
Yeah.
he was the
Yeah, it's Michael Myers. Yep.
Michael Myers, which is really weird if you know him, you're like,
Yeah.
no way. Like nothing about him looks like
Right.
it or
Yeah.
acts like it
Yeah.
at all. But yeah, I think I used to watch those movies and the Friday the 13th movies. And no, I mean, I liked them. I think they, even though they might feel like corny, as in they all have those, they have all of their stereotype, characters and blah, blah, blah. They still managed to get me. And which, makes me nervous. Like I can't watch, you know what I can't watch? I've watched it. I don't know if I watched it all the way through. Is Freddy.
Oh, okay.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Scares the heck out of me. It really scares me.
Yeah.
There's something about it. So horror is a hard genre for me because I'm a kind of a sucker.
That's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Like I said, if the blood kind of just splurted out, like I could see the machine working,
Yeah.
maybe I could handle it better. But when it's realistic,
Okay.
it's scary.
I feel like you're kind of pitching you would rather see a Death Spa 2 than like most other horror.
Death Spa 2. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be in it though. I don't want to
We'll make
see
it
it.
happen.
Yeah.
Hey, if Scream 7 can recast all the people that have passed away in the previous one,
they're doing that, right?
Death Spa 2 can have you come back. So we'll make it happen.
I wonder how they're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So now the film had a limited release in the United States in July of 1988. Do you remember going to like a premiere or anything to watch the film? Or
No, it's funny you say that because I don't know if I even knew if it ever saw like the theater.
No, okay.
I don't know if I even knew that it saw the theater. Like I wish I had a picture of it on a marquee. That would be so cool.
Yeah, because it was odd because the film was released in Japan in 1989 on video before it released on VHS in the United States in 1990.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like sometimes the release dates and everything was just so crazy, but I know it just made like a Blu-ray release combo pack release back in 2014. So I think that picked up the trend of people getting into the film and like learning a little bit more about it. So I think it was like Shout Factory or something that had picked it up.
One of those. Yeah.
That's so wild. I know so many independent filmmakers that can't get anyone to give them a dime for a film about, some kind of meaningful something. And meanwhile, people are like, give money to Death Spot, make it come out again. Yeah, it's very funny.
It doesn't look great on Society, but it's all right.
Hey, wherever people can get their enjoyment, whatever makes you feel good.
Exactly.
I remember, so around the time like the Blu-ray released, I think Entertainment Weekly had wrote an article labeling the film as the worst best Halloween movie of all time.
Oh my God.
Like we said, as a horror fan, we take that, we love that, so we do monthly movie nights with people that come to our events. And we show these films, and it brings a lot of people together. And I think it's so great because everybody has a good time. We can laugh, and it's Dave. Talk a little bit more about it.
It's turned into this amazing little community of people that all share their love for this thing that we all kind of know is sort of ridiculous, but also like warms our heart to get together and to share it and be able to laugh with each other, not take each other too seriously, not take the film too seriously. It's like such a nice thing, and that we've been doing this since like 2018 and watching like it grow to the capacity. Like, we started with like 12 people coming, and now, I think our max was like 160 for Troll 2 or Troll 2 got like that's a really crazy B movie. Well, like the amount of people that came out to that one was incredible. So it's like, there's so many people that enjoy, these types of films.
I can totally understand that, especially in a group. I think that's like because
Mhm.
it's a guilty pleasure, but it's particularly if you're with other people,
Yeah.
it elevates that pleasure. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I think what you said earlier is kind of, it truly is the case. Like things have, like outlooks of things has changed. I think to be a horror fan, like when Brandon and I were younger, being a horror fan meant like you enjoyed these things alone and you didn't really talk to anyone
Mhm.
about it.
Right.
But now we like, it's kind of out in the open. You can be an out, horror fan, and
Mhm.
people aren't shaming you about it or like
Right,
judging
right,
you based or think you're like some kind of weirdo. So
right, right.
it really has changed, but I think that's super helpful to films like Death Spa and so many
Mhm.
others because
Yeah,
now people can share them with others and talk about them
right.
freely.
Yeah.
I also, I go to Comic Cons a lot.
Okay.
And so I'm introduced a lot more to people who are fans
Yeah.
of the horror films, of the horror genre, but also of actors who you guys would know, who I don't know, so much from the horror work, but they're there with these big lines, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs sometimes, like, waiting for like a Fresh Prince fan to show up or something,
Mm.
and people, or a Death Spa fan, I guess.
Sure.
No, but no, but you'll see people with this, like, that just flocks
Yeah.
of people to, because they really garner some true diehard fans.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They really do. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, I would believe that Fresh Prince has
Yeah,
that
we've
as
got
well.
Yeah.
we've got our share. We've got our
Yeah.
share. I was exaggerating, but we have our.
Yeah.
Karen, it's so crazy because when we share like, our love for horror, it's
Mhm.
like so funny because when me and Dave share our stories, like our grandmothers are the ones that, would watch these films with us. And so when we
Oh my
tell people
gosh,
that, they would sit there and like, your grandmother loved horror films?
Yeah.
We're like, yeah,
that's
so.
so great. I mean, I think it's really interesting. It says a lot about the genre. I mean, it's a genre
Mhm.
that's been around and it's lasted. And if you've got your grandmothers that are having fun sharing it with you, not feeling
Mhm.
like, I mean, how old were you when you were watching with them?
I was young, so I was probably
Yeah.
around like 5, you know what I mean?
And
So,
your grandmother Brandon was sharing more of like some of the B movie and
yeah.
like straight to video movies. My
Mhm.
grandmother would watch some of like the black and white horror stuff. So they both had like their different interests with it, but it kind of shaped the way we view
It's so
films and stuff
interesting.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says a lot. I mean, like I said, it's a genre that's been around for a long time, and it's stronger, I think, than ever, probably right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says a lot about an outlet that we respond to as a society, and we need, I guess,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? It's interesting.
It's cathartic. It's
Yeah,
yeah, it's a lot of things for people. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It is.
So transitioning over to Fresh Prince a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Less bloody.
Less bloody, I guess. Before we actually get into the Fresh Prince, I just have to ask a quick question. What is it like with that reboot that they've done? And have people like come and do people feel like they need to share their opinions about it with you and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that stuff? Yeah.
People definitely always want to know what I think and tell me what they think. And it's like it's all the way one way or the other. Either it's I refuse to watch it. It's not the same show. It's not. I will never watch it
Mm.
again. I'll never watch that show. Or it's I love it. I think it's great. It's really whatever. So it's like it's one or the other. But I have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of
Yep.
like cool.
Now, is it true that Death Spa helped you get an audition for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Because it's written somewhere that an NBC executive saw Death Spa late night on cable, and that's how they came across, you in films. Is that true?
I love that story on so many levels. I love that. It is so ridiculously not true. I mean, it's like the funniest thing I've ever heard. I had to audition for the casting director's assistant because the casting director couldn't be bothered to see me.
Wow.
I hadn't done it. Only done Death Spa and
Yeah.
like girl number 2 on this. Yeah, I'd been on little nothing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I auditioned. Took a long time before I saw any executives. I did a lot of auditioning, callbacks, and I don't think anybody from NBC ever knew that I was on Death Spa. If they did, nobody ever
Okay.
told me. Nobody ever said, "Hey, saw you last night on Death Spa." Never happened. That's funny.
Oh, that's awesome. So, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had a big impact on my life and Dave. Monday nights, we had to stop what we were doing, come in the house, you know what I mean? And I think that was like so important back then, just that was like family time. Like, you know what I mean? It was like everybody would crowd around the
Yeah.
TV, and it's so different today, you know what I mean? I think it's like for my kids, they have streaming and they're watching all different shows at
Yeah.
once, and then so it's like, oh, I miss that, you know what I mean? Like sitting around the TV watching like stuff together at times. But
Yeah.
so
I
yeah.
do too. I miss that I miss that as a community, and I mean that as a wide, countrywide community. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, it was so cool how, I mean, definitely things like shows that came on once a week, and then there was like the whole water cooler thing. So the next day, everybody would talk about what happened, or there were, like, I mean, it definitely with television shows, but also things like The Wizard of Oz used to come on like once a year, and everybody, or It's a Wonderful Life would come on at Christmas time. And they were like, you waited, you were like, oh my gosh, it's coming on. And you were so excited. And everyone was it was this communal thing. Everyone was gonna see it together. Or like, TV shows. I remember when it was, what was it, like the last episode of Seinfeld or something. Everybody was like, oh, it's the last episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I didn't even really watch Seinfeld that much, but I wanted to be in on watching the last episode of Seinfeld. So, because it was kind of a thing everyone was doing, and
The shared experience.
it was a shared
everybody's
experience,
having.
and it connected people. I mean, I think we talk about, I mean, I'm not going to get political, but we talk about how we're all so divided now.
Yeah.
I have to say, with the internet and streaming and stuff, it's just another thing that has further divided us, because we can curate our world and our bubble and stay in it over here, and then we not only do not share these experiences that we were all sharing before, we also keep our stuff separate. I'm just going to keep my, it's like having a subscription to what your life is. And it all just reflects everything you already like.
Yeah.
It doesn't introduce you to new, you're not sharing it with somebody across the aisle, say, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of a drag. Like before, we were all in it together with maybe with differing opinions, but we were all in it together. Now we're just differing opinions, and it's like you're over there and I'm over here.
Yep. You're right. Like also just streaming has taken away that exclusiveness to things. So like there's no more hunting to find something. There's no more like we have to tune it in at this time in order to watch it. It's everything's instant gratification, and nothing truly feels that special anymore.
That's so true. And you don't get the accidental introductions to things too. I mean, I don't want to go too far, but I mean, when I was a kid, here I go. When I was a kid and we only had, so many channels, I mean, this is before you guys, but like Jacques Cousteau, for instance, right? Like there would be shows like Jacques Cousteau's, whatever it was called, or these Mutual of Omaha, whatever, like nature shows and stuff that wouldn't have been my choice as a kid to like pick, especially if I had a gazillion channels that catered to me like we do now. But I would end up watching these things, and I would learn and be introduced to the most amazing creatures of the of the sea, and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have thought of that would inform things that went on in my life later. But because they were kind of accidental, like you had to stumble upon. And I mean, Night Shadows was a little before me, but I know that from other people I know, like things like Night Shadows, this opera, kids weren't wanting to watch it, but they kind of were forced by flipping around and having limited stuff.
Sure.
And so I don't know, it was a very different kind of.
It's true. You sometimes would watch things not because you enjoyed it, but because it was like you were waiting for the next thing. Or like, so like if like TGIF was on and there's like 4 programs and like the third one you don't really care for, you're going to watch it because you're waiting for the fourth one to come on. So you would you had to learn to tolerate things, and you didn't just say, no, I'm going to go watch something else instead. Cause no, there wasn't really anything else. And it's very different.
Did you guys ever see that Betty Davis movie where she played twins? She was like evil twins.
I know what you're talking about.
Not Baby Jane, but I'm talking about
Yeah.
there's one where it was at that stage of her acting career,
Mhm.
but she was these evil twins. And I just remember being up late at night and it was like, you stumble upon it and think, what am I watching? It's this old black and white. And I
Mm.
just see lots of
Oh,
old black and white movies that way.
Yeah.
it was Sisters, right?
Is that what it was called?
Yeah,
They were sisters. Yeah. I don't
yeah.
remember what it's called.
That was
But
the one we watched, right?
Yeah, we
Brandon?
watched it. Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
oh,
Yep.
really?
Yes. We watched that one.
And
Yeah.
it's so, but as a kid, like I just stumbled across this weird thing, and that happened with lots of things, but that one I
Mhm.
remember in particular, and they stuck with me, but they were
Yeah.
complete accidents because you're just fumbling and there's nothing on, or like you said, you're waiting for the next thing,
Yeah.
and so you have to wait it out and watch this thing, and it opens up whole worlds to you.
Yeah. We just lost any viewer that's like in their 20s. They're like,
No,
just,
I know, they're
these are
like,
just disgruntled people. Like, no, but I want to go back in time a little bit sometimes.
what we're
Like,
saying is just shake it up, just like you guys. If
yes.
instead of, I know
Yeah.
I know you don't understand how this worked, but what you can do for yourself is just kind
Yeah.
of close your eyes and like hit the thing, and wherever you land, just stay there for. Nobody will do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
In a million years, no one will do that.
Another like more serious note about the Fresh Prince and your involvement, I wanted to ask you about. I just wanted to hear your thoughts a little bit about like how you feel Fresh Prince impacted like society and maybe even like ongoing just like shows like that, Family Matters, even the Cosby Show, just like their portrayal of like showcasing African American families in ways that like hadn't really been shown that way before. And like in some ways, I just think it gave people a very different perspective that like everybody felt like they could connect with. And
Yeah.
like I don't know if you had any thoughts about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that I've noticed from talking to people. More as time has gone on. Of course, I'm able to understand and digest a lot of the influence and witness the influence that the show had on people, and compare it. And we were on the tail of the Cosby Show, so we were a little bit like taking the Cosby and like flipping it a little bit. So it was like,
Yeah.
here's this wealthy, instead of just like, they were as kind of middle class, upper middle class,
Mhm.
family. We were upper we were upper
Yeah.
class, and we were doing it. We were all messed up, like we were a little bit wonky. We had Carlton and Hillary as the older siblings, so we had a really dry butler who was just like and so, and then of course the cousin, the wackadoodle cousin who comes to town. So we were kind of like flipping it like that. What was really cool is, number one, we were poking fun a little, so it wasn't quite as like earnest in a way.
Hmm.
But we had, what's really cool about Fresh Prince too is we had, what was it, 6 or 7 Black characters, and they were all so different from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone was very different. So there wasn't this monolithic, Black people are like this. They all kind of watch, see, dress the same ways kind of thing. Instead, we had, we had the Black Republican, we had the bougie, daughter, we had the young one who's growing up and being kind of very like activist type, energy. We had Will,
Yep.
whatever that is, his thing. We had the lawyer becoming a judge. We had the mother who was this, she actually was this great dancer, but now she's like an educator. And we had, of course, Jeffrey the butler, who's British, who's
Yeah,
British.
yeah.
A lot of people are surprised to find out that no, he is British.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He wasn't just doing an accent. No,
Yeah.
he's back in England right now. But I think it was really great for all audiences, and I know it was definitely great for Black audiences because they were like, yay! I don't have to be this one thing that agrees with this whole thing. I can. It's acknowledged that I don't even have to be any of them. It's just by them all being so different, it acknowledges that we are all so different.
Yeah.
And I think that was refreshing. It doesn't seem like such a big deal these days, but at the time, I think it was refreshing for people. And that was part of what worked really well in the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely, it was for me, growing up in South Providence at the time, and it was like really bad back then. And so there would be like episodes that it would touch on, what I mean? Like there's a lot of like violence, gun violence and everything here. So, like the episode, like when Will was shot, what I mean? Like that played like a big impact on me as a kid because it was just like that was normal to me seeing like, you know what I mean,
Yes.
stuff like that happening.
Yeah.
And then it was just like to see on TV how a family would, deal with those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from a different standpoint for me. So I was just like, it always kind of like did that for me as a kid, kind of seeing how different families, black families would kind of like take on, the problems in the world, so
Yeah, that's good to hear. You know what, I think that's again talking about different genres and the value that
hmm
they have to us as a society, much like horror or something that we need somehow. I think that
yeah,
the sitcom is really underestimated as a really powerful
Yeah.
genre. I
hmm
underestimated it while I was on it.
yeah,
I will admit, I've come to understand that whole Trojan horse kind of um, thing that it has, which is, we come in with all of this comedy and make you laugh. Ha, ha, everything's
hmm
so silly, everything's so funny, and then release this boom, hit you totally in the solar
Hmm.
plexus with something real when you least expect it, when you're wide
Yeah.
open. I
hmm
think that was a really great thing that the sitcom was capable of doing successfully, and Fresh Prince definitely did that quite a bit. You're laughing, you're having a great time, you're just
hmm
loose with all of these people that you welcomed into your house, and then his dad, abandons him again,
yeah,
and
yep,
everybody's just like, "Ugh," and relating to it, and also feeling with the protagonist like Will. I think feeling like, if he's going through this, because you relate to him, and it's like he's so confident all the time,
hmm
he's so on top of it, and if he's facing these challenges, then my facing it, it's like I can acknowledge it, it's real, and he's going to get
Yeah.
through it. I'm going to get through it. I think there was a lot of power in using that genre that way and having him as a protagonist.
Yeah.
and like it was the same thing like you working with James Avery, and that touched on for a lot of people that didn't have fathers. You know what I mean? I remember like J.
Yeah.
Cole has a line
Yeah.
in his song, rest in
Rest in
peace, Uncle
peace.
Phil. You know what I mean? The only father I ever knew. You know what I mean? So it's like that, the impact on like how these characters, changed our lives. It was very important. And also for Hillary too, where, how women can carry themselves these days, and
Yeah.
doing stuff like that. So it's just been really important. I just want to say thank you
Oh,
for all
thank
that you have
you.
done, because like you said, TV has played an impact for like on our age group. And, I mean, I don't know how it would have been if we didn't have shows like
Yeah.
that. So,
Well, thank you for saying it. I do with Hillary. I would say I definitely have come to appreciate her more
yeah.
now than I did then. I
Sure.
hmm
didn't recognize, and times change and people change and generations receive different messages. But
Yeah.
I do think that where she was kind of this like written off before, the truth of the matter is she was incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We can say what you
Yep.
want about Hillary, but she was like, she had a talk show, she was a weather girl,
Yeah.
she was just like doing it all. Like she
Yep.
was,
Right.
and unapologetic about her way, and and her who she was and how she came into a room. I think that that's something I've found younger generations now. I talk to all the time. People have empowerment lunches and events that are like Hillary themed because of that representation of
Sure.
somebody who comes in and goes after what they want with that kind of authority. And that's a beautiful thing. I love that. I think she definitely gave me that permission too.
hmm
Playing her, it was an important it was nice to get that, because I wasn't that kind of, I was always like, you make everybody happy and make sure
Yeah.
everything's okay. And then I got to play her, and it was like, oh, I get to be bad. I get to say what's on my mind. I get to, and yeah, it was good to have a little bit to see that part of me
hmm
live.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were saying about sitcoms and like kind of their value. I also think like sitcoms taught us so much about like empathy too, because
Yes.
hmm
we were able to view people in family styles that weren't our own, and we were able to feel so strongly about these other
Yeah.
people that were in situations sometimes that we would never be in. Like I'm
Right.
never going to live in like such a nice house and have some of the struggles
Yeah.
that were happening in that show or some of the other shows I was watching. But at the same time, you felt something. And
Yes.
hmm
It's
yeah, so
important.
I feel like that really did teach so much empathy and just kind of that ability to connect to people, whether you identified it like them or you didn't. It just
Yeah.
you felt the same.
I agree with you. Connecting through our humanity,
Mhm.
I think it was really important. Again, that goes back to that thing where everyone was watching it.
Yeah.
So, all sorts of people were watching it because it was what was coming on Monday night at 8. So
Yep.
everyone was watching it, and it forced that kind of empathy on people where now people don't, they can just watch what they want, or they can just watch White Lotus.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too. You share something, some of your cast members on Fresh Prince share something with you too. There, a bunch of them were in horror films as well. So
Mm.
Alfonso Ribeiro was in what?
Ticks.
Was it Ticks?
Yep.
And
Yes.
Joseph Marcel, Jeffrey. He was in a movie that Last Exorcism of God or something like that.
Right. I want to
Yep.
see that. That was recent, right?
That was
Yeah.
2021. We actually had that screener sent to us. We were able to talk to the director. And actually, when the director reached out to us, our selling point was that Joseph was in it. We're like, oh, I definitely want to watch that. So, and then obviously Will Smith has been in a variety of like sci-fi and action thrillers, and
Yes.
kind of horror adjacent films as well. So,
Right. I like that horror adjacent. Got to use that.
I want to ask is, so obviously being on a show that blows up, or being in any project that blows up the way Fresh Prince did, it's a blessing, right? But is it ever not a blessing, like that people can't view you other than Hillary Banks, or they have a hard time accepting other projects?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think for Alfonso Ribeiro, I think that was the acting career kind of for him. I think he feels like, that was it for him. I mean, he's Carlton to people, and that, and it's a testament to what a great job he did. But at the same time, everyone's like, nope, that's Carlton. They don't want to see him as anything else. They don't want to give him a chance to be anything else, because it's, and I definitely had doors that would not open for me. I had more doors in life since the show open. So definitely more people, things opened for me. But while I was acting, because I'm not acting so much these days, I'm writing, but when I was acting, it was hard. I had people say, no, we know what she does. No, we know what she does. And my agent,
they don't even need you to try out to audition, because they already think they know you.
My agent couldn't get me in the door.
Yeah.
For parts that I was really right for, but and also I had another little patch of difficulty for a while, because there for a long time there were very few Black leading men, right? Yep. And women weren't getting, for a long period of time, women were not getting, there weren't that many leads for women, let alone Black women leads. So Black women often, when you got a chance to act, it was when you got to be the significant other of the Black guy, right? Mm-hmm. So, what Black guy dominated film for a while? Will Smith. Nobody wants to see me kissing up on Will Smith. Nobody wants to see me as his significant other. So those were all off the table.
Yeah.
So there was that. So there were some areas where it was problematic having been on the show, but mostly it's, I mean, I honestly, come on, the show's been, it may have affected some of my acting stuff, but it's been a blessing. It was great.
Yeah. Good.
That's awesome. So Dave and myself for years have worked with children. We have years of experience. We find it really cool and highly important that you're providing like support to schools around the country. What pushed you into this direction to, make this change, this transition from acting?
Thank you. No, my mother was a librarian. I think I mentioned that earlier. My mother was a librarian, and even after, I mean, I grew up with her as a librarian. I spent countless hours in the library as my babysitter. And then as an adult, my mom, still working in the library, would call me from time to time and share stories that she found at the Black Resource Center, where she was archiving different information and photos and things. And she told me the story one day about Henry Box Brown, an enslaved man who literally mailed himself to his freedom in a box. He was in Virginia, and he had a box built. He got in, and they helped him. They nailed it shut, put postage on it, and sent him from Virginia to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when he arrived across state lines where there wasn't slavery, and he had survived in this box, he was free. And he spent the rest of his life telling this story, and yet I had never heard it, and I just thought it was the most remarkable story. And my friends hadn't heard it. My mom hadn't heard it. And so that story would ultimately be the impetus for my organization, Sweet Blackberry. That would be the first story that I would tell. That was the story that got me moving because I wanted to share it with kids. I wanted kids um, to not only know about his story, which was important because I felt like it was being lost, but also I wanted kids to recognize that obstacles can be opportunities to do great things and to really triumph over incredible odds, and that we have that capability. And so the stories of Sweet Blackberry, they're little known stories about Black people in history and events that you don't hear about so much. Our history books tell us a handful of stories, incredible people, incredible stories, but there are so many more. And I do think that when you only tell a few, there's also this message that you're receiving that only a few special Black people come along, once in a while. Like, oh, Barack Obama is one of the special Black people. Oh, Maya Angelou is one of the special Black people. You know what I mean? You get that's the subliminal message that you get, is that Black people aren't really doing great things. And that's equally as detrimental, I think, So I think it's really important for all children to understand the truth of the matter, but also to recognize their history. These are American stories. I know we have a nice short little February month that we dedicate to Black history, but we need to start moving that into just our regular curriculum. The truth is you can call it Black history, but all of those stories are American history stories. Everyone should be learning them. They shouldn't be something that only Black people are. It's like that's our history. It's over here for 28 days. Like, what are we doing? This is, I want all the kids to know about this history and be inspired by these people, and recognize also that a lot of these people overcame incredible difficulty and were so determined to break through and do the things that they did because of racism, because of, enslavement, because of, Jim Crow, whatever. But those things don't define the people. It's that they overcame these things, and kids can identify with that in themselves. I want them to see, like, you're capable. Yes, that, something might be blocking you, but figure out how to go around it, over it, under it, move it, to get to the other side. And so with these stories, I want to impart that wisdom onto children. I want them to understand that about themselves, that they can persevere and they can have the same kind of triumph. And so that's what these stories, they're about real people and their accomplishments. Yeah. But ultimately, that's a message I really want to drive home.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I also have other books for middle grade, and I'm just finishing my first young adult thriller, not horror, but a young adult thriller story right now. Yeah.
I love this concept because you're right. There's so many stories that we won't learn unless we intentionally try to seek out stories.
Right.
So I do think it's important that, these stories be brought to children and young adults so they can understand them. And there's so many examples that, like, as a full grown adult, I'm still learning, and I'm like, how did I not know that about this period of time? Or, like, I'll share with other people thinking it's more common knowledge, and then, like, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I one of the ones I can share is, like, the 1921 Tulsa race massacre. Like, the idea that there was this community in Tulsa that was African American thriving community. There was all these businesses, and it just got torn down. It just got completely desecrated, and it was all out of fear and, kind of not wanting to see other people thrive.
Yes.
And I never heard about that until somebody mentioned it to me, and I looked into it, and I'm like, wow, how is this never taught?
Exactly. And they tried to reframe it, and they did try to reframe it as riots and stuff like that. And it's not the truth. I mean, it was they set out to annihilate and flatten them, and they did. I was in Tulsa, and I went to the museum where they have it. They show it. They show so much about it. And oh my gosh, it's just devastating how methodical it was too. And people were just living their life. They weren't bugging anybody, and they were thriving, but that was not okay. And I think that that's important for us to see that and understand, That's not, I know there's a lot of like book banning and stuff going on, but it's important for us to understand history like that. That shouldn't be hidden because it informs a lot. It helps us with context of situations that we find ourselves in. Everyone should be privy to this information, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Your story, Clouds Over California, it's one of your latest titles, I believe. It's about this young girl and kind of like her experiences growing up in the 70s, dealing with like family dynamics, and there's some societal themes going on, such as like the Black Panther movement's kind of happening, and she has a family member that's kind of drawn to that. And it just sounds like a very personal story. So I was kind of interested to hear like.
Yeah, it was inspired by my childhood. Yeah. And what's so funny is I'll just tell you really quickly what it's about a little bit is that her teenage cousin comes from back east to live with them in Southern California because her cousin's getting into trouble back there. And when I wrote it, I didn't realize until a kid pointed it out at something like, isn't that the Fresh Prince? I was like, oh, shoot. I didn't mean that. It's just inspired by my cousin came to live with us when I was a kid from Boston to Southern California, to Santa Monica, and came and sit because she was getting into trouble. These cousins, these East Coast cousins.
Yeah.
And so she came and stayed with us. But also it's in the 70s. I said it in the 70s. The timelines aren't perfect with my growing up at all, of course, and not everything is exact to my childhood, but it's during the women's liberation movement. And it's like, my mom is very much like Stevie, the main character's mom, who's someone who's kind of like a Donna Reed, good, wife and mommy and everything she's supposed. She's this kind of old fashioned woman in the household doing her role. And yet the world is changing and women are fighting for their rights and they're getting their rights and they're burning their bras. And, it's like the whole, everything is going. And this teenage modern young woman comes to live with them and turns the house upside down because suddenly she's presenting a whole different reality for the mother. And Stevie idolizes her mother. She thinks she's like everything. She thinks she's so great. She watches old black and white movies with Rita Hayworth and Ava Gardner with her, which is the epitome of beauty. And this cousin comes along and it's like, well, here's Shaka Khan and here's Cleopatra Jones. You want to see some beauty? You want to see some kick butt beauty? And she sees these women who have big hair like her and look like her, and they're beautiful. And she's kind of turns everything on its head, and the mother too. All of a sudden, the mother's like being encouraged to not wear her wig and wear your natural hair, and it's just she just flips things, and the father is very much like, hey, what's going on? Like everything's okay.
Yeah. Right.
What's all this commotion? So it just turns everything upside down. And she does introduce her as well, ultimately, to the Black Panther movement. And I wanted to have an opportunity to pull some of the information about that into the story, just because I think my whole life they were completely villainized.
Yes.
Grew up and they were just. And even in the book, I've got, the aunt and the mother, they're saying, oh, they're troublemakers, they're out there with guns and they were a frightening presence for a lot of people. And we were all told through propaganda and everything that they were just bad and that they were just militant. And the truth of the matter is that the breakfast programs that schools use today came from the Black Panthers introducing.
I think at one point in time, I read something like they were feeding like 20,000 children breakfast throughout the different communities that they were running their breakfast program. Nobody ever talks about that.
Nobody ever talks about that. I mean, they ended up adopting that same principle and idea, adopting that program. The whole idea was to protect the community and uplift the community and do what we can, because they're not getting it. The community is not getting it. So we're going to do what we can to help our community. And we're also going to protect them. And that's where they had guns, because if it's our right to be able to carry this, well, we're going to protect our community too. But of course, that was easily spun as something else. And my whole life, my whole growing up, that's what it was. I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of show the truth of the matter and show how and why people thought the other, because I think it's fair to show it's understandable why people thought the other thing, and always when we don't have enough information, it's easy to go to what's, what the news is telling you, what propaganda is telling you.
It's sort of like flash forward and you have like the NWA and like their, gangster rap kind of like talking about like police brutality. That's essentially what started the Black Panther movement, was police brutality.
Absolutely.
And things like that. It was just a different approach about how they addressed it. But even that got, villainized at the time. So it's just, history just kind of repeats itself.
Well,
it's a little different each time.
And the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
I mean, that was another reason I wanted to pull that into that story, because there was a lot going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that being, again, villainized, and there were things that were all of a sudden bubbling up to the top that were untruths. And I thought it was like, let's just take a look at these things, and hopefully people will always seek out the truth and not just accept the first thing you hear.
Yeah. Wow. Karyn, thank you for this conversation, taking it to all the different directions we just went. And
I know, all over the place, right?
No, that's beautiful,
good.
though. I think that's kind of like how a conversation should go when you're talking to people who are of high intelligence and obviously well educated and know what they're talking about. So thank you for sharing everything. Do you want to share with people where they can kind of follow along with upcoming projects or things that you want them to be checking out?
Well, you can find, I'm on Instagram, Karyn Parsons, and I think I don't know if it's just Karyn Parsons or Karyn Karyn with a Y. I'm terrible at knowing exactly how my Instagram and Facebook are. I'm not on Twitter or X anymore, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and so is Sweet Blackberry. You can find Sweet Blackberry both places as well, and see what we're up to and the things that we're doing. Awesome. And there's also Karyn Parsons. I think I have a KarynParsons.com website now. I do. I'm awful at all this stuff.
Can you purchase the books on your website?
You can't you can purchase the books. You can get them through Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but I encourage everyone always, if you can, if it's not an emergency, you don't need it right away, contact your local bookseller and tell them what you want. They'll order it. They'll get it quickly. They will get it quickly. It's much better to do it that way and keep it going that way, because Amazon doesn't need your business, and Barnes and Noble will be okay if you go to your local bookseller. Yeah, and they definitely do need your business. So
yes, that's great. And I think you forgot to mention one thing. Death Spa is streaming for free on Tubi. So people,
of course, Tubi has it. Tubi is wild.
Yes. So everyone can kind of, check out the film and see exactly what we were talking about.
Oh my God, I think I'm going to watch it tonight when no one's looking. God, it's so funny. I can't get my son to like watch Major Payne, which I think he would really love, but it's like I'm on it, so it's like anything I'm on is kind of like nerdy. I would love when he's not looking to just put Death Spa on and have him just walk by, and if he sees me, I wonder if he would recognize me.
I hope it's the dance scene. That would be
oh no, the dance scene's so sad.
How old is he?
17.
Oh, okay.
17.
Yeah.
I feel like he could appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He has no idea. He has no idea. I'll never hear the end of it. Oh boy.
Well, Karyn, thank you again. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week with another episode, but definitely check out Karyn's books and Death Spa when you have a chance.
Thank you. Later.
Have a good night, everybody.
Game over.